Labour's let us down. Labour's done nothing for anyone. He's going to do everything right.
Welcome to Runcorn. This town is home to just 60,000 people, but it could hold the key to the future success of Nigel Farage and Reform UK. On the 1st of May, Runcorn and Helsby will elect its next MP in the first by-election of this Labour government, and Reform are eyeing up the seat to capitalise on their momentum in the polls. This would be the first time since 1983 that the town would turn its back on Labour. This could be a major coup for Nigel Farage's party, considering that things haven't been so easy for them in the past few months. Huge internal rows erupted after the now former Reform MP Rupert Lowe was accused of bullying and sending threats of violence by the party, allegations which he denies. This was the first real stumbling block for Reform, who had otherwise been seeing huge levels of success, being neck and neck with Labour in the polling. But that spat left them vulnerable to criticism.
I understand the member for Clacton wants to be Prime Minister. He can't even lead a party that fits in the back of a taxi.
All of this sets the stage for a very important moment for Reform. By-elections are often seen as a moment to gauge government performance, but this also feels like a litmus test for Nigel Farage and his MPs. But before we examine whether Reform can win here, let's take a closer look at Runcorn. On the banks of the Mersey, Runcorn suffered deeply with the decline of the chemical manufacturing industry. The 2021 census showed that in the constituency of Runcorn and Helsby, 41.4% of people are economically inactive. Halton Borough Council, which includes Runcorn, states that 30% of its residents live in high deprivation areas. The 2019 Index of Multiple Deprivation also cited it as one of the 30 most deprived areas in the UK. Our chief political commentator, Kitty Donaldson, went to Runcorn to ask the people there about the biggest issues facing their town.
Poverty. I would say poverty, people who are struggling to feed the children. I find it a struggle, and I work 2 jobs, and we shouldn't be living like this. We should all as a human, basic right, have access to shelter and food. It's a non-negotiable, that, but it's not happening.
I'd say jobs, because the only jobs that are really going are your average retail ones or a lot of warehouse work. There's no ambition or anything. There's nothing going on around here.
Any money has been piled into Widnes and not Runcorn. Runcorn basically is dead.
It's poverty. It's very, very depressed here. The old working class communities have failed now. Everything that's been money-wise has been taken away.
The constituency of Runcorn and Helsby was fought for the first time in 2024 and was won by Labour with a significant majority of 35%. But crucially for Reform, they finished in second place, beating the Conservatives by 2%. The previous seat of Halton, which included the centre of Runcorn, was won by Labour in every election since its creation in 1983. This by-election was triggered after the incumbent, Mike Amesbury, was convicted of common assault and given a 10-week suspended sentence. He then resigned from the seat. The history of Runcorn might make you think that this should be a cakewalk in a Labour stronghold, but the government has not made a popular start to life in power. Although there hasn't been much polling in the area, one from Lord Ashcroft puts Reform in pole position to win the seat. And speaking to the people here, you can see that a real anger has emerged towards Labour, and that this may open up opportunities for significant gains for other parties. People here told us they were turning away from the traditional status quo of Labour and the Tories, with not only Reform, but the Green Party seeming to pick up supporters.
Labour's let us down. Labour's done nothing for anyone. He's going to do everything right. Yeah, he's going to bring back the winter fuel payment. He's going to make sure the housing's right for people.
I would normally vote Labour, but I haven't since Jeremy Corbyn was removed as leader. Keir Starmer, I don't believe a word he says at all.
I've always voted Labour. My values don't align with the people in power's views, so it's kind of been deterred into contemplated reform, but I don't also agree with their views fully.
I have been thinking, but I really don't know, to be honest. I've always voted Labour, working class background, but unfortunately the way the country is at the moment, I'm in 2 thoughts, whether to vote for somebody else.
And who are you tempted by if not Labour?
The Green Party.
I like Nigel Farage's stance on things. As long as he does what he says he's going to do. Stop the boats, and bring a little bit more common sense back to the way we are.
But not all voters seem convinced by Reform UK, with some particularly put off by Nigel Farage's relationship with Donald Trump.
Well, I've been a Labour supporter since I could vote. I'm disillusioned with things that haven't to do at the moment. But if it means Nigel Farage doesn't get in, I'll vote for anyone, myself.
I've always been a Labour voter, full Labour supporter all my life. I'm struggling to choose Labour at the moment, but at the same time, I absolutely will not be voting Reform in this election. I find it very difficult to take Reform seriously because of this sycophantic Trump love. I just don't understand it. I don't get it.
One of the biggest local issues has been the Daresbury Hotel, which has housed asylum seekers for years. Some locals complained that the influx of people had placed further strain on existing services that were already struggling, and that it had caused some tension in the area. Over the weekend, it was announced that Daresbury Park was one of 9 asylum hotels earmarked for closure, with the male asylum seekers moved out of the hotel a few weeks ago. But Reform still seem to feel this is an area of vulnerability for Labour.
The Labour candidate openly welcomed illegal immigrants into Runcorn. When the by-election was called, she completely U-turned on that policy and said that they would shut the hotel down. Our solution as Reform UK is to shut the hotel down, remove them out of Runcorn and remove them from the country.
I suppose the argument that she would make if she were here would be that the hotel's lots of women and children in there and they probably just want to work. Have you got any objections to that?
I think you'll find that the majority of people in the Daresbury Hotel are young men who have come here as illegal economic immigrants, and that is not, they have not come into the country legally, and they should be sent back. The people of Runcorn are desperate, Runcorn and Helsby, the whole constituency, but particularly Runcorn, one of the most deprived towns in the country, are desperate for somebody to stand up for them and get some investment back into the town and do some regeneration and things like that. So I will be a strong voice for Runcorn because the Labour administration has failed this town so badly.
While Sarah Pochin and Reform are on the attack, Labour have the difficult task of trying to defend a seat whilst the government's favourability is dropping.
We've certainly heard some of those concerns on the doorstep, and what I've said to everybody is what I say to you now, which is that, there are reasons why those difficult decisions have been made. We've inherited a more difficult financial situation than we were anticipating. In terms of winter fuel allowance, we have protected the triple lock, and all of those things are enabling us to deliver the things that we're delivering now on public services, on skills.
And over the weekend we saw that the government had announced the closing down of the asylum hotel locally. Do you think there's a recognition that Reform are snapping at your heels in the local area?
I think, and I've said this before, that closing down the asylum hotels was something that was in the manifesto last year at the general election. It's just not something that is much talked about. And that, for me, is not coming from a place of prejudice or discrimination, quite the opposite. It's coming from a place of human decency, that they are not nice places to put asylum seekers to live because they can't cook, they can't clean, they're on top of each other in their living, etc. It's just not a nice place to be held. And the fact that they're held for so long because the processing has been so slow, and the government are putting in more resource to make sure they clear that backlog quicker. Of course, while they're in those hotels, it's also costing the taxpayer a lot of money, and it is also causing some tensions locally as well in the local community. So for both the community and for the asylum seekers, I think the closure of the hotels in the long term is win-win, and it is just delivering on the promise we made in the manifesto, and has very little really to do with what Reform are saying. I'm not focused on what Reform are doing or saying. I'm focusing on what I'm putting forward.
Runcorn represents a crucial marker for both Reform UK and the Labour government. If Labour can keep their stronghold, it could mean that they can weather the storm of unpopularity circling around parts of the party. Even if they do lose this seat, there is a possibility that this is just voters venting their frustrations, with some residents saying to us that they would be open to a return to Labour in future. But for Reform, the stakes are different. If they are able to win this seat in the Labour Party's heartlands, could this reinvigorate the party and drive them to try and topple the Red Wall?